Hi, my name is David Kramer, culinary arts instructor at the College of DuPage. Today I want to make a traditional Venezuelan arepa for Hispanic Heritage Month. So I want to show you a few things first that we're going to be working with. We work with some pork shoulder, and we're going to braise this with some aromatics, some chicken stock, garlic, onions, chilies, bay leaves. And while that's simmering, we're going to make some dough that we're going to fill the arepa with. So as we walk through this, I'm going to give you some variations of things you can do, some fun you can have with it, and some different fillings that you can do. Okay. So when you're cooking the pork shoulder, choose to use pork shoulder, you want to make sure that you cook it very slowly. So you break down that connective tissue, make it tender, make it very flavorful. You can also do this in a pressure cooker or if you have an Instant Pot. But make sure that you save everything with it, all the juices and everything that are in with the pork. Okay. So in our pan, we're going to add a little bit of vegetable oil, neutral tasting. You can use olive oil if you have that. And to that, we're going to add onions, the garlic, the bay leaf, and the poblano chili. So what we did with the poblano chili is we took the chili and we burned it on the burner so we could blister the skin and take it off. It gives a lot of nice roasted flavor. But the thing to remember with some of the chilies, especially poblanos, once you start to heat them up, it accentuates the heat in the chili. So if you're to taste this raw, it might not be very spicy, but once you heat it up, it starts to get a little hot. So if you want it spicier, add more. Not so spicy, don't put so much in. Okay, so I'm going to put some salt and pepper in here. Okay, don't be afraid to season this. So with arepas, what we can do is we can make them into a sandwich, which we're going to do today. So where we make more like a pancake that we're going to split in half and open up and eat like a sandwich. Some of them you can leave open face if you like, and you can just top them. So it really depends on where you go to have arepas. Done a little differently in South America or Mexico or Spain. So fun little tidbits, and they're very regional. Also too, if you have larger cuts of meat, it's going to be easier to shred this into pieces before you fill it into the arepa. Just going to get a little bit of color on both sides. And don't worry if it sticks in the bottom of the pan a little bit. That's going to release itself when it begins to cook. And it really creates a lot of nice flavor when you do that. Okay, some chopped onion, garlic, a couple of bay leaves, and then that poblano chili that we roasted and chopped. Get this incorporated. It's going to take quite some time to cook, probably about an hour, hour and a half. You can also cook it in the oven if you like. So if you have a Dutch oven, put that in there, cover it, and put it into the oven. That works really well. Okay, and then our chicken broth. Recommendation that if you are buying chicken broth, recommend the low sodium. So as this cooks and reduces, it doesn't get salty. Just scrape the bottom. Get some of the tidbits off the bottom, the little brown bits. That's all the flavor is. Okay, so I'm going to move this to the back burner. And then you can cover it. If you have a piece of foil, you have a lid, anything just to keep it covered while it's cooking, keep all those juices in there. Turn it down to low flame and just let it simmer nice and slow. So check for doneness. You can take it and see if you can tear it very easily if it falls apart. If it's not coming apart very easily, just leave it cooking. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our arepa dough. Okay, so I have a bowl that I'm going to use. I have some plastic wrap ready to go because we're going to cover this and leave it sit for about 30 minutes. Okay, so we have our corn flour here, very fine. And with this, it's not like flour. You don't really have to worry about over mixing it. Okay, and then we're going to add some water to this. Now, really depending on the time of year, if it's more humid, you don't need quite as much water. If it's drier out, you need a little bit more water. So add some water, not quite all of it. And we're going to mix this into a dough. And you're going to see it's going to be very loose in the beginning and come together pretty quickly. But what's important with this is that when it's sitting, it needs to hydrate. So what's happening is it sits for those 30 minutes. We're going to make sure that it's not too wet and it's not too dry. So in the beginning, it might feel a little wet. Give it some time for that water to be absorbed. You can also put a wet towel over this as it sits. I like to use the bowl to get all those little bits up. Now I just use the glove to keep my hands clean. Okay, so now what I'm feeling for, let's get an idea. Now I can really feel this. It's just a little dry. So if it's cracking, okay, and on the edges, means it needs a little bit more water. So just a splash. You don't need to add much. And then again, if you add too much water, you can always add a little bit more of the corn flour to it. So with this corn flour, it's already cooked. It's a cooked, dried product. So it's not like flour where you have to cook it again after you brown it. Okay, that's better. So you see it's not as dry. Now, you can make this ahead of time. If you do, I recommend that you take it out of the refrigerator about an hour before you're going to use it. It's going to be much more easier to use. The other thing that you can add to this, add a little bit of vegetable oil. It can make it a little bit more pliable. Okay, so just set this off here to rest. Put away our water. Okay, next thing we're going to do is check on our pork. Just make sure it's simmering, okay? And you're going to have extra liquid while this is cooking, so don't be afraid that you're going to have too much in there. Okay, so I have some dough that's already made. And I've had it sitting out for about an hour. And you can see it's much softer. And yes, you're going to see a little bit of cracking, but that's okay. You can see that when I push down on it, it's very easy to push down. Okay, so take 2 equal-sized pieces. And what we're going to do now is we're going to make a patty out of this. So traditionally, with Venezuelan arepas, we're going to make a sandwich. So we're going to make this about 1/4 of an inch thick. And then we're going to brown it and put these in the oven. And they take a little while in the oven. They take about 15 minutes in the oven. So what's fun about these is that we could fill these with whatever we want. We could even add cheese to the dough if you wanted to. In that sandwich, you could put vegetables in there. You could put meat in there. So you can have fun with this. Nice thing about these is I can make these ahead of time. So you're going to see when we brown them and then put them in the oven, if you want to make them a day ahead, you want to make them earlier in the day so you have them ready. And then you just warm up your filling and put them in. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go to the side. Okay, so to brown these now, you can use a non-stick pan, you can use a cast iron pan, you can put them on the griddle, put them on the grill outside. A panini press works really well. But what we're going to do is we're going to brown them, and then we're going to put them into the oven so it gets light, gets fluffy, and cooks all the way through. Okay, use some butter. Butter's going to give you really good flavor, good color. And don't be afraid to use a lot of butter. The butter will be absorbed into the dough. And once you make them, they're a little bit more fragile. So if you do make them ahead of time to this point, why don't you keep them just slightly chilled? And they don't need to be exact. There's good street food. So a nice medium heat. And that'll take a few minutes to brown. Okay, so I have some pork already prepared. So you can see that I have shredded it. The chilies are in there, the onions are in there. Just be sure that you take the bay leaf out. And there's also still some of the juice in there, that really good flavorful liquid. We're going to need that when we go to heat this up to put this inside of the arepa. So now this will be softer, like a pancake. So you can use your hamburger spatula to turn this over, which is fine, a rubber spatula. You might start to see it puff just a little bit just because of the air that's coming through it. So there's nothing wrong if that's if you see that. You could also make them smaller if you want. Make them more individual and make them bigger if you wanted to, and then cut them to sandwich. I'm just going to take a peek at this side. Okay, just a little bit more color. Okay. So you get a nice little crust on there. Gives a good texture. It's going to help keep it together when you pick it up to eat it. Okay, so now we have some butter on the other side. Pour some of that butter back over the top. Okay. And now what we want to do with this, we're going to put this in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. The bigger ones are going to take a little bit longer. The smaller ones won't take quite as long. Okay, and I have some already ready to go. Okay, so what we're going to do with these now, we're going to heat up our pork. Okay, and you just use the same pan that you used for the arepa. You can just wipe them out. And you're going to see why it's important to keep that juice. Okay. We need that to heat up the pork. It's gonna get a little softer and suck up some of that juice. This has been in the refrigerator, so it's a little firm. You might want to taste it. If you want to season a little bit more, a little more salt and pepper. Okay. Okay, so now that's nice and hot. What we're going to do is we're going to take the arepas and we're going to split them. Okay, so you can take a serrated knife, is the best thing to use. And I'm going to saw back and forth. Try not to press too much so you don't slip with the knife. And when we cut them, you can stop when you're just about to the end, and you can make them open up a little bit easier to keep the filling inside. You can see it's steaming. Okay. Okay. And this one, same thing. Okay. Open these up. Take our filling. A little juice is okay. Okay, some queso fresco. So when that cheese hits the hot pork, it's going to melt a little bit. Nice and creamy, a little salty. A little bit of cilantro in there. Okay, and there you have traditional Venezuelan arepas. Hope that you enjoy Hispanic Heritage Month.